Hey, what's going on everyone? Before I get into things, let me just say this. This isn't a review of Sonic R. This is merely my opinion on not just how I feel about this game, but also more importantly, how I feel like I differ from many people who played new games on new consoles back in the day, and even to this day. And also somewhat, this is a history of me and Sonic on the Sega Saturn. There's one thing that has never been an issue for me when it comes to new consoles, and that's the desire or need to have a mascot character there day one, or sometimes even on the console at all in that generation. I mean, I grew up when characters like Mario and Sonic had or were just entering into gaming for the first time. From all memories, I didn't leave the NES after playing the world-changing and arguably most hyped video game ever, that was Super Mario Bros. 3. A game which many people back then, including myself, first saw in motion in the movie The Wizard, which was beyond hype. I mean, just imagine seeing a game revealed in a movie, it's pretty crazy. I never left the NES, demanding that the Super Nintendo launched with a new earth-shattering Mario game. In my mind, I never thought, if there was no new mainline Mario game on this system, then it would be a failure. Now of course the SNES did launch with the GOAT, that is Super Mario World. And as mind-blowing as that game was to me, especially seeing things like the giant bullet bill flying across the screen with that pixel size for the time just felt gigantic, and once again just blew my mind. But at the same time, I'd say that games like F-Zero and Pilot Wings, brand new IPs from Nintendo, blew my mind just as much, if not more, and I wanted those just as much. I've always been a massive advocate for new IPs launching a new system, and the Sega Saturn was no different. Although I got my Saturn in 1996, so I wasn't quite there for the launch, although not far behind. Naturally, as a kid deeply in love with gaming, I saw the Saturn in magazines and demoed in game shops. Seeing the system being completely different from the Sega Mega Drive, especially in software, was never, and I mean never, a turn-off for me. Seeing the likes of Virtua Fighter 1 and 2, Virtua Cop 1 and 2, and Sega Rally on the console was just insanity. But at the time, when I finally got my Saturn, my early games were the likes of Virtua Fighter, as mentioned, but also games like Mysteria, Clockwork Knight, Bug, and then games like Nice into Dreams, Panzer Dragoon 5, and of course Tomb Raider, just to name a few. In my opinion, at the time, and even to this day, I didn't want, or truthfully, even think about a brand new Sonic game leading the console, or Sonic even being the mascot of the system, even as much as I considered Sonic 2 to be easily one of the best games ever at that time. To me, Sega and the Saturn at that time wanted to be different. They felt different, seemingly trying to create new mascots for a new 3D era. And I saw all those attempts with successes in my mind, with the likes of Bug, Clockwork Knight, Panzer Dragoon, and Knights. All these amazing new IPs which had never come before. Trying something new, creative, and different on this new 3D console, which I had fallen head over heels in love with. But it was other games as well, like Rayman, which gave me a vibrant, colourful, and immensely fun platformer, which I still love to this day. Which it left me barely thinking about Sonic. All these new games with me distracted by all these new IPs. In my mind at the time, as a gamer, not yet fully thinking about the industry as a whole. Instead just enjoying being in the moment. All these new experiences never made me personally feel that Sega needed a Sonic game on a system to carry it forwards. I was super content. In my mind, Knights was Sega's and the Saturn's new mascot for that generation, with other games supporting it. So when it finally came to Sonic games arriving on a system, one of the first games I was exposed to through a demo disc was Sonic 3D, Flicky's Island. And I still have that demo disc with another important Sonic game on there. Now, I played this demo at the time and thought Sonic 3D was pretty trash, compared to everything else I had played at that time on my Saturn. The only thing I liked about it was the music. but mainly also the new bonus stage I got to try, which was a full 3D rendition of the Sonic 2 bonus stage, which for me was immensely impressive at the time on the Sega Mega Drive. To me that was 3D. I actually loved that bonus stage of Sonic 2, and it was great to see it recreated here in Sonic 3D. But that was about it. But yeah, the demo of Flicky Islands, meant nothing to me, so I never bought the game. Honestly, I was so happy with everything else I played up till then, and was so deep into that new generation of the Saturn, offering completely different experiences from the Master System and Mega Drive, that this Sonic demo never bothered me. I honestly enjoy just playing the bonus stage every now and then on the demo, and yes, I played demos a lot then. Everyone did, almost like they were full games to us. Another thing as well is that I played Christmas Nights into Dreams before I owned the full Nights into Dreams game. I got the Christmas Night disc with my Saturn, and funny enough got another one of the discs with a Saturn magazine in like 1997, which is why I have 2 copies of the game. But as one of the unlockables in Christmas Nights, you got to run around as Sonic. Once again, a demo, but man, did I live and breathe Christmas Nights like it was a full game, which it was in my opinion. So for me, this was a moment where I started to imagine what a 3D Sonic game would be like, but still not to the point where I was demanding a new game. And the other game I played on a demo disc was Sonic Jam. Now, this demo made me go, oh, yes please, because this demo had the Sonic Jam 3D world on it, which, man, what can I say? This was my jam. It was only a short-timed demo, but it was enough to make me want to buy Sonic Jam, which I did, and I played the Sonic World section way more than I actually played the Sonic games on Sonic Jam, all of which I had already previously rinsed on the Mega Drive. But to me, this was a new Sonic experience I was happy to get into, and in many ways set up my hype for what I consider not only the Saturn's best Sonic game, but also the Saturn Sonic the Hedgehog game. My hype for Sonic R was built up through my Saturn magazines and demos of the game. The idea of not having a Sonic platformer, but a Sonic racing game, I think made more sense to me than the concept of a Sonic as a platformer. Just looking at the screenshots got me crazy hyped. I remember thinking, I wonder what it'll feel like to run around that part of the map in 3D when looking at all these screenshots. As I always try to say, remember people, this was still the era where many IPs were coming into 3D for the first time. So in many ways, I was looking at these images as if the stages to the Mega Drive Sonic games had, been brought into 3D for the first time, and in many ways they were. This as a Sonic fan, it was beyond exciting. But this time it was a racing game, where the objective was to truly go as fast as you can through the stages. This was another hype racing game for the Saturn from Sega, where we only had a few, with the likes of Sega Rally being, the peak racing game on the system for me. With the likes of Mario Kart and the N64 doing great, this was the Saturn's mascot racer in many respects, and I was all there ready for it. Graphically, the screenshots were blowing my mind, and of course I had a bit of that Sega zealousness in me, wanting the Saturn to match or outperform the PS1 in areas, which of course it was already doing. If I had a chance, just Sega. But playing Sonic R was a visual and audio treat as a Sega and Sonic fan. Visually it was one of the best looking games on the Saturn, and then we have the soundtrack with the glorious vocals of TJ Davis, who I instantly fell in love with. To me, this was one of the best soundtracks to a Sonic game ever. Hell, it might be my favorite, with Sonic 2 and Sonic Adventure running up, close behind. But I loved the voice of TJ Davis. It was just magical to me.
Where do all the rainbows go? To somewhere
The soundtrack was just everything I loved about that era, the 90s and Sega at that time. Just pure pop and pure fun. Some people would say it's a guilty pleasure, but if you find music pleasurable like this, then you have nothing to feel guilty about. Some people say it's cheesy, but I say that vocally, TJ, puts to shame many commercial pop singers of that time. And the lyrics and music created by Richard Jacques was, are truly fun, creative, and often have an inspiring nature to them. Graphically, the water looked incredible. The levels had fog in, but it was always far away enough for you to see where you were going. It was only the last level which had actual pop in. But that was fine because the transparency of the level looked absolutely stunning. The Saturn's own Rainbow Road, and being in that generation, you would understand the fogging and popping and what these systems could and couldn't do in certain scenarios. It was just part and parcel. The levels in the game might feel short, but the way they have been built are literally like Sonic the Hedgehog levels, but put into 3D. They all have branching paths and things to find along different routes, and playing this game at first, the levels truly felt maze-like, which added a level of exploration to them, a sort of racing adventure, which I utterly loved. There were Sonic themes everywhere, from springs to jump off, loop-de-loops, items to collect that would grant you shields for running over water, or the lightning shield from Sonic 3, which would attract rings. Hell, even a title screen, being able to spin the logo around or change its color, was amazing. And I used to just marvel at the reflection, in the letter R, which once again let me remind people these types of effects were still new to us and blew our minds, or at least mine. And it's just all these little things in games, I just loved. People back then indeed complained about the lack of content or controls, but man, I could list so many games back then that had little content, but many games were still arcade-like back then, and we found replaying these games, mastering them, just as much fun as being bombarded with tons of features. And sometimes games can have too many features just thrown in for the sake of it. Sonic R doesn't have, in my opinion, major controls issues. Like people say, each character controls differently. Sonic is the fastest, but his cornering isn't that tight, whereas Tails is slower, but his cornering is much better. And later, when you unlock Super Sonic, he's pretty much broken, with both speed and cornering being near perfect. If you come to a grinding halt in front of a wall, then yes, it's a slow turn on the spot. But with all games, learn and master the controls and you'll find those situations rarely happening. Jank is part of video gaming and something inherent to us gamers' love for the hobby. A little bit of jank and control mastery should always be acceptable. Sonic R is one of my favorite Saturn games, and my nostalgia for it, my nostalgia levels for it are insane, and I don't care what anyone says. The Saturn didn't need a mainline Sonic game for me, because the Saturn's mainline Sonic game for me was Sonic R, a unique and new take on the Sonic IP within a generation that was firing new IP and new idea at us gamers left, right and center. We didn't have a 3D Metroid on the N64. So what? We got the next gen. And the same happened to Sonic when we got Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. I'll rate Sonic R to the end of my days, and I'll continue to say that it was the Saturn's 3D Sonic. It made me even fall in love with Traveler's Tales, and I consider them one of the best developers of that generation. Peak Saturn Sonic fun to me, and I am just happy I was there to see it and play it all as it happened. I guess in many ways I wish people would feel the same way about many IPs, not needing to be there as a console staple. It's not about not wanting to see new entries in this series, but it's about accepting and trying something new, which then could also become a standard, but also make the console feel unique and new for that generation. I mean, could you imagine now a Sonic R2? I mean, we got Sonic Racing, All Stars Racing Transform, which in go-kart, but it's a phenomenal racing game. But man, if they brought back actual running Sonic in that sequel, I'd be in. I mean, we're talking Sega of today, but let's just say it was peak Sega of today. I would be hyped. So let me reiterate this. Sonic R was and is the Saturn's 3D Sonic, and I will die on this hill. Sonic R for life, people.